What's going on, guys? You are welcome to Web Chrony Online YouTube channel. Today we are going to tackle conditional statements in JavaScript. Before we begin, let's take a moment to understand what conditional statements are. In programming, conditions allow us to execute specific blocks of code or call certain functions based on certain conditions being met or evaluated as true or false. Let's think about it this way. Suppose you meet someone and you want to greet the person. You look at your watch to check the time to see how to greet the person. So when you check your watch and it is in the morning, you greet the person good morning. If it is in the afternoon, you greet the person good afternoon. And when it is in the evening, you greet the person good evening. In the same way, we can give conditions to our code and then run certain blocks of it based on the outcome of the conditions. Okay, so in this video we will learn all the various types of conditional statements in JavaScript. We will begin with the commonest one, which is the if-else statement. We will take a look at the switch statement, which is an alternative to the if-else, especially when the options are many, and then we will complete it with the ternary operator. Without any further delay, please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. With all that being said, let's open our console and begin. Okay guys, so with our console opened, I'll move my cursor to this icon so that my screen will be split into two. This is where I'll be typing my codes and this is where I'll be obtaining my feedback. So we will begin with the if-else statement, and I'll create a function and call this function greetings like this. Bring my parenthesis and pass time as my parameter like this. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to check the time. If it is in the morning, I will say good morning, else I will say good afternoon. So I will say if into bracket time is equal to morning like this, then I will return good morning like this. Else, I'll bring my else block down here and say return good afternoon like this and run. Good. So when I call greetings like this and pass morning and run, I will get my good morning, and when I say evening and run, I will get good afternoon. Now let me bring back this code and explain something to you. Let me bring it right here. Let me copy and then paste it here. Now this is what we are doing. The code will start running from the top. So what is happening here is that when the code is running and it reaches here, it will check to find out if the time is morning. And we are saying that when it evaluates this statement and it turns out to be true, it should return good morning, else it should return good afternoon. So the only thing this code is doing is to check whether the time is morning, and if it is in the morning, it will return the good morning. Any other time or any time other than the morning will result in a good afternoon. Now in the situation where we have more than two conditions, how do we use the if-else to do it? Now let's create this function one more time. Again, I'll clear everything so that you have a feel of it. So I'll call this function greetings one more time like this, and inside it I'll have my time as my parameter. So I'll have my first if statement and say if time is equal to, don't forget it should be 3, though 2 can work, but I prefer the 3, and I will say return good morning like this. Then I'll come here and say else if into bracket time is equal to afternoon, then I should return good afternoon. And if nothing and if nothing works, I should return good evening. Great. So now before we run this code, let me take my time to explain to you. Now when this function is being called, this should be greeting, so let's change this one to G like this. Now what happens is that when we call this function, the function will check whether the time is morning. Now if it is not morning, then it will check whether it is afternoon. If it is neither morning or afternoon, then it will return this one. But if it checks and it is in the morning, then it will return this one. If it checks and it is in the afternoon, it will return this one. And if it is neither morning or afternoon, it will return the good evening. Is that okay? So I'll run this function like this, and I will call greetings into bracket and try morning and run, and I will get my good morning down here. If I try afternoon like this and run, I will get my good afternoon, and then finally if I try evening and run, I will get my good evening. Now what do you think will come when I try night like this? Oops, like this and run? I will still get good evening because the conditions are simple. Check if it is morning, run good morning. If it is not morning, check if it is afternoon, run good afternoon. If it is neither morning or afternoon, run good evening. So anything other than these two conditions will cause the function to execute the else block. Okay guys, so we move on to a better alternative to the if else statement, especially when there are so many options. So I'll create a new function called greet like this, and inside the greet I will have my time as parameter. So inside this function we are going to use what we call the switch statement, and I will explain to you what the switch means. So but before then, let's write our switch statement. So I will have my switch statement like this, and I will have the time as a parameter in the switch statement. So in the switch statement we have what we call cases. So I'll say case and say morning, bring my column and say return good morning like this. Then afterwards I'll bring a semicolon and then bring what we call a break like this. Then I'll move on to the next case. So case when it is afternoon like this, and then I will return good afternoon like this, bring my semicolon and then break again like this. Then I'll move on to the next case when it is evening like this. Then I'm going to return good evening like this. Then I will also break. I will have another case and say night and say return good night like this, and also break. Then finally I'll have a default and say return night, something like this, just something to represent something like this, and also break. Great. So I will come to this open and closing curly braces and click it so that it will structure my code very neatly for me. Great. Now let's take a look at what is happening here. what is going on here is that we have a switch statement. So the switch statement will take a look at the time and compare them to the cases. So unlike the if-else statement where we will check the first condition, if it doesn't match we check the next condition, and it doesn't match we check the next one until we finally run the else block. The switch statement is very fast and efficient, and it is very useful when you have multiple conditions to loop through or to check through. So if I run this code, I'll just call the function greet like this, and then I'll pass morning like this, and then run. I'll get my good morning. I'll try afternoon and run. I'll get my good afternoon. I'll try night and run. I'll get good night, and of course I'll try evening and run, and I'll get good evening. If I bring any other time, let's say I bring dawn, I still get my night. So let me bring it back and then explain something to you. Great. So what is happening here is that we say look through all the cases, and if none of the conditions matches what we are looking for, we should return the default value, and the default value we are returning night. Okay guys, so we move on to the ternary operator. The ternary operator allows us to write concise conditional expressions in single line. So I'll create a function and call this function person, and I'll add age as a parameter, and I'll say let status equal to, and I'll say if age is greater than 18, then I'll bring my question mark, which means then I would say adult, and if it is less than 18, I will say minor like this. Then afterwards I will return status like this and run. So if I call person and put let's say 12 and run, it is a minor. If I put 18 and run, it is still minor. And if I put 19 and run, I get an adult. Now what this code does, let me copy it back here and then explain to you what this code does. Okay, so I have a function called person, and it takes the age parameter, and we want to assign a data to a variable called status, and we are saying that check if age is greater than 18, then the status should be adult, else the status should be minor. So after you call this function and pass the argument to it, the function will check to find out whether the age is greater than or less than 18, and if it is greater than 18, it will assign adult to the status, but if it is less than 18, then it will assign minor to the status. Alright guys, so this is where we wrap it all up. Thank you very much for sticking with me to the very end. In the next lesson, we are going to incorporate our conditional statement into our app that we created in the previous lesson. So if you didn't watch that video, go and check it out right now, because next lesson we are going to put it all together. I hope to see you in the next lesson, so subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Leave a like on this video because I appreciate it. It really helps me to draw more people just like you together so that you all learn. If you find anything difficult, don't hesitate to post it in the comment. If you have any question, don't hesitate to comment. I have the link to my WhatsApp group in the description. Make sure you join so that you can receive personalized support on the platform. It is absolutely free to be a member of this cohort. Until we meet again in the next lesson, peace out.